It might seem far-fetched to add 60 pounds to your squat in only 30 days, but today we're going to tell you exactly how to do it. What's up guys, Jared, Force Pro Fitness. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're talking about adding a lot of weight to your squat in just 30 days. So if you're a beginner, you can really add a lot of weight to your squat in a short amount of time. And this is because you're far from your genetic potential as far as how strong you could ultimately be if you weight train for 5, 10, or 20 years. So in the beginning, these gains come up relatively quickly, and then as you get closer to your genetic potential, they tend to slow down. For example, let's say you're 25 or 30 years old, you've never been serious into weight training, you start out, you may be able to squat 100 pounds, 135 pounds, first day in the gym, and let's say you do that for 3 sets of 5, it would not be uncommon for you to be able to squat 195 for 3 sets of 5 in about 30 days. That only comes out to adding 5 pounds to your squat 3 days a week for 4 weeks is 60 pounds. It would be rare to not make those kind of gains if you're doing things correctly. So when we talk about strength training, we got to talk about specificity. Say you decide you want to add a bunch of weight to your squat in the next 30 days, so you're going to have to make squatting a priority. When I talk about specificity, that means that your body is very good at adapting to the kinds of stress that you put on it. And so we want to make sure that we're not putting a ton of different types of stress, because it's going to try to adapt to all of those. And it's really good at adapting at one thing at a time. So if we're wanting to increase our squat max in the next 30 days, squatting is going to be our priority. So whenever we go to the gym to weight train, we might want to squat first because our body's fresh and a lot of the energy and stuff we're putting is going into squatting. If you're doing a ton of running on the side, or if you have running is a really important goal for you and you really want to add a lot to your squat, it's going to be hard to do both of those simultaneously. So you may want to cut down the running a little bit or whatever other activity you're involved in, or you may just want to go to a maintenance phase of your running so that you can progress on the squat. What I mean by that is every time you run, you're not putting out 100% effort, you're not running every day, you're kind of taking it easy in one area so you can really progress in the other. So with that, let's talk about exercise selection. So when we're talking about squatting, there's a lot of different ways to squat. There's the body weight squats, or some people call them air squat. You can squat with dumbbells, you can squat with kettlebells, and those are great for their intended purpose. There's also front squats, split squats, barbell back squats, and today we're going to be talking about barbell back squats specifically, and there's a reason for that. If you're going to add 60 pounds to your squat, it's going to be very hard to do that with a kettlebell or a dumbbell. The squat is using your legs, your back. They're going to progress very quickly. Like I said earlier, if you go to the gym, you might be day one, you might be squatting 100 pounds. It's going to be hard for you to pick up a dumbbell that weighs 100 pounds and squat with it simply because your arms are not strong enough to do that. Maybe they are strong enough to pick up a 100-pound dumbbell and do squats with it. However, if you add 60 pounds to that in 30 days, it's unlikely you're going to find a dumbbell that weighs 160 pounds at your local gym. Even if you can, picking it up, holding it with your arms while doing multiple sets of squats is going to be very challenging. It's the same reason that we don't use kettlebells when we're squatting really heavy, and that's why the barbell is so effective. The barbell allows you to hold the weight on your back instead of with your arms, and also allows you to incrementally add weight in small amounts, 5 pounds, 2.5 pounds, 10 pounds at a time. So front squats is another option that you can use with a barbell. However, we're not going to recommend that here because today we're talking about beginners adding a lot of weight to their squat. Front squat is very challenging to do just simply because of the mobility that it requires from the shoulders to get in a good position. It's really harder to learn, and it's kind of more of an advanced squat. If you're training for any amount of time, I'm sure at some point you're going to use the front squat, but for beginners and for adding a ton of weight in a short amount of time, we're definitely going to pick the barbell back squat. Earlier we talked about specificity, so since we're trying to squat heavy, we want our program to reflect that. With our programming, we're talking about how many reps should you do per set, how many sets you should do per workout, and what kind of weight should you be doing in those sets. So the first thing, let's talk about repetitions. Repetitions are going to be in the 5 to 6 rep range. Some people will say you could go up to 8, but I really like 5 personally. This allows you to use a heavier weights because you're only doing 5 reps, and it keeps you from doing so much work that conditioning comes into play. The next thing we'll talk about after reps, now we're going to talk about sets. So sets are, for beginners, are usually anywhere from 3 to 5 sets of one exercise. And the reason for that is, number one, when you're first starting out, you're not that strong. And so you can really wear yourself out quick, and it can be hard to recover. What you don't want is to do a ton of work on the first workout, and then 2 days later on the second workout, you're still sore, you're really fatigued. You're not able to lift the same amount of weight you were the first time, or even add to that. So we really want our first workout to be appropriate and enough stress to cause an adaptation, but we don't want to overdo it where it holds us back in the following workouts. Also, when we're talking about sets, as a beginner, whenever you're first starting out, your body doesn't need a ton of stress to adapt. It's very sensitive to the stress you put on it. Someone who's been training for 6 months to a year, they may need to transition from doing 3 sets to 5 sets to continue to progress. But in the beginning stage, you don't need that many sets. The next thing to talk about is loading. As I said earlier, since we're going to be doing 3 sets and we'll be doing 5 to 6 reps, the way to tell if we're doing the correct amount of weight is if you can complete the assigned sets and reps. So if you put on a certain amount of weight and you can't get 5 reps on the first time, then you know that's too much weight. In the opposite end, if you don't put on enough weight and you feel like you could do 10 reps or 15 reps, you know you need to go up in weight. So one last thing we have to talk about is recovery. So if you look it up on the internet, most of what you'll find is there's recommendations for 8 to 10 hours of sleep. There's a couple that say 7 if you're young, but suffice to say, sleep is important, especially if you're lifting weights. You need to get your rest to allow your body to rebuild itself. Another thing to consider as part of recovery is your nutrition. If you're on the heavier end, you may want to increase your protein intake and decrease some other things. That way you're not gaining weight. As you gain muscle, your body will be gaining weight as long as it's not losing fat alongside of it. The good news is, as a beginner, you can gain muscle while losing fat and losing weight if you're already overweight. Now, if you're on the other side, if you're skinny for your size, then you're probably going to want to gain weight. For both people, the recommendation for protein is anywhere from 0.8 to 1.7 grams of protein per pound of body weight. And if you're gaining weight and you don't want to be, just cut down on the other things, maybe cut down on some carbs. And then if you're on the skinny side, you're going to gain weight. You should be gaining weight maybe 1 to 2 pounds per week if you're going to put on a lot of weight onto your squat. If you stuck around this far, we really appreciate it. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Make sure you're using that barbell to lift heavy weights. Make sure you're doing 5 to 6 reps and 3 sets about 3 days a week on your squatting, and get your recovery in, get your sleep, get enough protein, get that squat up. So really appreciate it. Thanks again. Have a good one. We'll see you on the next one.